Of all the ways I thought I might die, mauled by a rescued circus bear, pecked to death by a flock of angry chickens, or maybe just a good old-fashioned caffeine-induced heart attack, I never imagined my final moments would be spent arguing with a homeowners association president during a Category 4 hurricane. Her name was Brenda Higgins, but to me, she was simply the binder. She stood at the end of my driveway, a bulwark of beige slacks and blistering self-importance, holding a thick white binder to her chest like a holy relic. The wind was whipping her perfectly coiffed hair into a frenzy, but her expression remained as rigid and unforgiving as concrete. "Leonard," she said, her voice somehow rising above the gale with shrill authority. "I've already told you. Section 14, Article C, Paragraph 2 of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association Agreement, which you signed, explicitly forbids commercial vehicles exceeding 1-ton capacity from parking on our streets." Behind her, the two beautiful, life-saving retrofitted school buses I'd emptied my emergency fund to rent were idling, their drivers looking on with a mixture of pity and disbelief. Behind me, on the property of my chaotic animal sanctuary, the Second Chance Saloon, 74 souls were barking, meowing, and squawking their way into a panic as Hurricane Ophelia began her final, furious approach. "Brenda," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "I want you to listen to the sound the sky is making. That's a 150-mile-per-hour wind on its way to turn your prize-winning petunias into mulch. My commercial vehicles are here to evacuate 60 dogs, 10 cats, a pig, a pirate's parrot, and 2 guinea pigs named Thelma and Louise. They are, quite literally, lifeboats. Are you familiar with the concept of a lifeboat?" She tapped a perfectly manicured nail on the cover of her binder. "The bylaws are the bylaws. They are for the protection of our community's aesthetic and property values. A hurricane is no excuse for anarchy." I stared at her. I truly did. I let the words, "A hurricane is no excuse for anarchy," wash over me. It was the single most incredible sentence I had ever heard. I wanted it on a throw pillow. I wanted it on my tombstone. For a fleeting second, I wasn't even mad. I was in awe of the sheer, weaponized audacity. This woman wouldn't just have rearranged the deck chairs on the Titanic. She would have written citations for leaving them in a disorderly fashion while the ship went down. This whole mess had, of course, started as a perfectly normal Tuesday. The morning had been deceptively calm. I was on my 3rd cup of coffee, standing in the main yard of the saloon, conducting my daily census. The saloon wasn't so much a property as it was a sprawling, barely contained explosion of life at the edge of the otherwise pristine Whispering Pines estates. My grandfather had left me the land, a 2-acre island of joyful chaos surrounded by a sea of manicured lawns and soul-crushing uniformity. Trip, a 3-legged golden retriever with more optimism than sense, was trying to herd a litter of recently rescued kittens. He wasn't very good at it, mostly because he kept getting distracted and trying to lick them into submission. "Trip, they are not your flock. Leave the tiny furballs alone," I called out, sipping from my world's okayest dog dad mug. From his perch on the porch railing, Hannibal, a Congo African gray parrot who I was convinced was the reincarnated soul of a disgruntled sea captain, let out a piercing squawk. "You're late." Yeah, tell it to my supervisor," I muttered back. "Oh wait, that's you, and your benefits package is terrible." Sir Oinksalot, a pot-bellied pig of magnificent girth and regal disposition, was sunbathing in a patch of mud near the fence, letting out soft, contented grunts. He was my Zen master. If Sir Oinksalot was calm, the world was okay. My world was loud, furry, and occasionally required a hazmat suit for cleanup, but it was mine. I'd walked away from a lucrative career as an emergency veterinarian because I was tired of the bottom line always being the dollar. I was tired of seeing good animals put down for lack of space or funds. So I poured my life savings and my grandfather's inheritance into this place, a no-kill, non-profit sanctuary for the lost causes and the last chancers. It was a constant battle against insolvency, but every wagging tail and grateful purr felt like winning a lottery. The first hint of doom came from Maria, my star volunteer. She was a high school kid with a heart of gold and an anxiety level that made a chihuahua look comatose. She ran into the yard, holding her phone out like it was a ticking bomb. "Mr. Maxwell," she stammered, her eyes wide. "The news! Hurricane Ophelia, they just upgraded her. To a Category 4. I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. We were in coastal Florida. We dodged bullets every season, but a Cat 4 was no joke. This was the kind of storm that didn't just knock over your trash cans, it relocated your entire roof to the next county. On the small TV in my cluttered office, a weatherman was pointing grimly at a swirling, monstrous vortex on the map. The projected path looked like a red marker drawn directly over our town. Then the final words came. "And the governor has just issued a mandatory evacuation order for all coastal communities, effective immediately." "Okay," I said, more to myself than to Maria. My brain, the old emergency vet part of it, kicked into high gear, pushing past the panic. "Okay, kid, don't panic. Panicking is not on the checklist." I strode over to a dusty filing cabinet and pulled out a thick, menacing-looking binder of my own. It was labeled in faded marker, "Evac Plan, Doomsday Edition." "Panicking is useless," I told her, flipping it open. "Step 1 is always don't panic. Step 2 is make a gallon of coffee. Get on step 2, I'll handle the rest." What followed was a controlled descent into chaos. My phone became a permanent extension of my ear. Volunteers, alerted by our emergency text chain, started showing up, their faces etched with worry but ready to work. The air filled with the sounds of rattling cages, frantic calls, and the steadily rising anxiety of the animals, who could smell the change in the air pressure better than any weatherman. "Yes, I'm sure," I barked into the phone at the rental company. 2 buses. No, the passengers won't be complaining about the lack of Wi-Fi, but one of them might try to chew through the seatbelts. Just get them here. Yesterday, if possible. I called our partner shelter 3 hours inland, a wonderful place in the middle of nowhere, run by a woman named Sarah who had the patience of a saint. "Sarah, it's Leo. We're coming your way, the whole circus." "We're ready for you, Leo," she said, her calm voice a balm on my frayed nerves. "Just get here safe." The plan was solid. It was going to cost me every last dime in the shelter's emergency fund. Goodbye, new industrial washing machine. Hello, saving 74 lives. It was a fair trade, I told myself, though I really, really wanted that washing machine. An hour later, the buses arrived. They were glorious, big, yellow, and sturdy. The drivers were 2 grizzled guys who looked like they'd seen it all. I was standing at the gate, ready to wave them in, a rare feeling of "I've got this" swelling in my chest. And that's when the golf cart appeared. It screeched to a halt, perfectly blocking the entrance. Brenda the Binder Higgins disembarked, clipboard in hand, and the world tilted on its axis. The standoff at the gate was a masterclass in futility. I tried reason. I tried pleading. I tried pointing at the darkening, angry sky. "Brenda, look," I said, gesturing wildly. "Big wind, much rain, animals go bye-bye. It's a simple concept." The bus drivers, bless their hearts, chimed in. "Ma'am, we'll only be here for an hour, tops, just long enough to load 'em up." Brenda was immovable. She looked at them with the disdain of a queen swatting away a gnat. The rules are for everyone. If I let you park your monstrosities here, what's next? Food trucks? A carnival? This is a residential community, not a truck stop." "It is a truck stop!" I yelled, my composure finally cracking. "For the next hour, it's the Noah's Ark truck stop, and all God's creatures, or at least my 74 of them, are getting on board." She just raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, pulled out her phone, and with a smug little smile, theatrically dialed a number. "Yes, I'd like to report a violation of HOA covenants and 2 trespassing commercial vehicles." The bus drivers looked at me, their faces full of apology. They couldn't risk getting their vehicles towed or slapped with a fine that would cost them their jobs. With a final, regretful shrug, they put the buses in gear. I stood there, rooted to the spot, and watched my beautiful, expensive, life-saving plan drive away down the pristine street of Whispering Pines Estates. Brenda crossed her arms, a triumphant smirk on her face. The first fat drops of rain began to fall, plastering my hair to my forehead. It was over. Checkmated by a 3-ring binder and a golf cart. For the first time all day, I had no idea what to do. The checklist was blank. Doom, it turned out, came in the form of beige slacks. The cops arrived 10 minutes later. Brenda, ever efficient in her tyranny, had made good on her threat. A cruiser rolled up, its lights off, and 2 officers got out. One was young, with a kind face that already looked apologetic. The other was older, with a mustache that seemed to carry the weight of every stupid domestic dispute he'd ever handled. "Folks, what seems to be the problem here?" the older one, Schmidt, asked, his voice thick with a profound lack of enthusiasm. "Officer, thank you for coming," Brenda began, immediately launching into her speech and brandishing the binder. She flipped it open to a highlighted page. "As you can see, Section 14... I cut her off. "Officer," I said, turning to the younger cop, Ramirez. "My name is Leo Maxwell. I run the animal rescue here. There is a Category 4 hurricane about to hit us. The governor has issued a mandatory evacuation. This woman," I said, jabbing a finger toward Brenda, "is blocking my evacuation efforts because my rescue vehicles are, and I quote, not aesthetically pleasing." Ramirez looked from me to Brenda, then up at the sky, which was now the color of a giant bruise. He visibly winced. "Ma'am, is this true?" "The bylaws are a legally binding contract," Brenda sniffed. Schmidt sighed, a sound so weary it seemed to age him another decade. "Sir, I understand the situation. We all see the sky. But this is a civil matter. The HOA covenants are a binding legal agreement. She's technically within her rights to enforce them on this street. We can't compel her to let the vehicles on what she claims is private road." "It's a road!" I exclaimed, my voice cracking with disbelief. "A road that leads to my property. What am I supposed to do? Teleport them out? Beam them up, Scotty? There are 60 dogs in there, officer. 60! They don't give a damn about aesthetic uniformity." "Is there any other way to access your property, sir?" Ramirez asked, trying to be helpful. "A back entrance?" I threw my hands up in exasperation. "Yeah, it opens directly into a cypress swamp. Unless one of you has a fleet of fan boats you forgot to mention in your police report, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard-ass place." Schmidt shot me a warning look. "Sir, watch your language." "My apologies, officer," I said, dripping with sarcasm. "We're stuck between a rock and a very particular place." They couldn't do anything. They knew it, I knew it, and Brenda preened in the knowledge of it. They were the human embodiment of a shrug emoji. After a few more minutes of useless back and forth, they got back in their cruiser and left, leaving me alone with the victor and her binder. I stumbled back into my office, the cacophony of barking and meowing now a physical weight on my shoulders. The rain was streaming down the windows in sheets. Maria was in the corner, trying to comfort a shivering chihuahua, tears silently rolling down her own cheeks. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah from the inland shelter. "Leo, where are the buses? The storm's getting worse. They're going to close the bridges soon." I had to tell her they weren't coming. I had to tell her my plan had failed. I hung up and slumped into my chair, the full weight of my failure crashing down on me. I had lost a decade of my life, of fighting and scraping and shoveling. So much shoveling was all going to be washed away because of a zoning ordinance. I looked around my office, at the photos covering the walls. There was Bessie, the one-eyed pit bull who was my first ever rescue. There was a photo of a whole litter of kittens sleeping in a pile on my chest. There was Sir Oinks-a-Lot as a piglet, small enough to fit in my hands. 74 lives, 74 stories. And I was going to let them down. No, no. Something inside me, something deep down that had been worn thin by years of bureaucracy and bull, finally snapped. The part of my brain that calculates risk and respects authority just short-circuited. If the rules were going to kill us, then screw the rules. A manic energy shot through me. I grabbed my phone, my thumb flying across the screen, scrolling through contacts past vet, volunteers, vermin guy, until I landed on a name I hadn't called in years, a name saved for the apocalypse. Sully. Do not answer unless end of world. I took a deep breath and hit dial. It rang twice. "Talk to me," a gravelly voice answered, background noise sounding suspiciously like a loud bar. "Sully, it's Leo. Leo Maxwell." A pause, then a booming laugh. "Leo, you son of a gun! I thought you'd fallen off the face of the earth. What's up? You finally decide to quit saving squirrels and come join me in the thrilling world of freight logistics?" "Close," I said, my voice tight. "Listen, how do you feel about violating a little bit of FAA airspace?" "My favorite pastime. What's the occasion?" "Sully, I'm calling in that favor. The big one." Another pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. "The Tijuana wedding favor? The one involving the very angry goat and the mariachi band's tuba? I thought we agreed never to speak of that again. Desperate times, my friend. I need a plane, a big one, the kind you can hose out afterwards, and I need it 2 hours ago." "Whoa, hold on. A plane? What's the cargo?" I took a deep breath. "Oh, you know, the usual. 60 dogs, 10 cats, a pig, 1 very judgmental parrot, and 2 guinea pigs, and my eternal gratitude, and 5 grand I absolutely do not have." The silence on the other end of the line was profound. Then, a slow whistle. "Maxwell, you magnificent lunatic, you're trying to airlift an entire zoo." "That's the plan?" "I'm in," he said, and I almost collapsed with relief. "There's a small private airfield 15 minutes from you. D-list place, mostly for rich guys with propeller toys. It's probably still open. I can be on the ground in 90 minutes. Can you get your petting zoo there?" "We'll be there," I said, a wild, impossible hope surging through me. The dice were rolled. Now I just had to build a casino before they landed. My next call was to Gus. Gus was a semi-retired contractor who had done some repair work for me last year. He was a grizzled 60-something artisan of grumbling, with a face like a road map and hands like catcher's mitts. "Gus, Leo, I have an insane life-or-death emergency, and I need you." He laughed, a sound like rocks in a tumbler. "What'd you do, Maxwell? Adopt a rhinoceros?" "Worse. I need to move 74 animals in the next 90 minutes, and my transportation just got upgraded from a bus to a cargo plane. I need ramps. I need to secure crates to pallets. I need a miracle with a nail gun." "You're out of your damn mind," he said, but there was a flicker of interest in his voice. "A cargo plane?" "Gus, I'll pay you whatever you want. Triple your rate. Just name it. I'm desperate." There was a long, suffering sigh. "It's gonna cost you. Triple my usual rate plus a stupidity tax for even making me listen to this story." "Done!" I practically shouted. "Just get here." 20 minutes later, Gus's beat-up Ford pickup roared into the driveway. He got out, shaking his head and surveying the scene. "A damn zoo airlift," he muttered. But then he pulled a massive tool belt from his truck. "All right, you lunatic. Where do you want the Ark?" What followed was the most beautiful, frantic, A-Team-style montage I have ever witnessed. Gus and the two guys he'd brought with him were a whirlwind of sawdust and swear words, transforming my workshop into a makeshift logistics hub. They were building platforms, reinforcing crates, and figuring out how to lash everything onto wooden pallets with a gruff efficiency that was breathtaking. The volunteers, energized by this new, insane plan, flew into action. Maria, my anxious teen, was now Director of Animal Manifests. She stood with a clipboard and a fierce look of determination, directing teams of people to gently but quickly load the animals into their designated carriers. I was on my own phone, the whiteboard from my office now propped against a tree, drawing a crude convoy map to the airfield. Sully called back with coordinates and a final warning. "Leo, this ain't a commercial flight. It's gonna be bumpy, and the FAA will have my license if they catch wind of this before I'm in the air. We have one shot." The rain hammered down, the wind howled, but inside our little bubble of insanity, there was only purpose. Look at us, I thought. A bunch of misfits trying to save a bigger bunch of misfits. The barking and meowing no longer sounded like panic. It sounded like a battle cry. We weren't just waiting for the storm anymore. We were flying right through it. The main gate of the Second Chance Saloon swung open. Brenda's post was, thankfully, abandoned. She had likely retreated to her beige fortress to laminate new rules and watch the Weather Channel with grim satisfaction. Her absence felt like a small, personal victory. Our convoy was a thing of chaotic beauty. Gus's pickup took the lead, loaded with 2 heavy pallets of dog crates. My own battered SUV was next, the back crammed with cat carriers and Thelma and Louise's cage strapped into the passenger seat. A volunteer's minivan followed, its windows fogged by the breath of 5 very large, very confused Labradors. It was less a convoy and more a clown car parade in the middle of a hurricane. "Easy, easy," Gus yelled out his window as we navigated a turn, one of his pallets shifting precariously. "I ain't losing a single poodle on my watch." We had to pull over on the side of the road, rain lashing down, to resecure the straps with bungee cords I found under my seat. My phone rang. It was Sully. "Leo, where are you? The wind's picking up. They're about to close the tower here. Not that I listen to those guys anyway, but it's getting dicey." 5 minutes out, Sully. Hold the plane. Do not let the plane leave," I screamed into the phone, while simultaneously trying to calm down Thelma, who was squeaking in sheer terror. I could see the headlines now. Local man blocks traffic with flying pigs, causes multi-car pileup. At least Brenda wasn't here to see it. The sight of Sir Oinks-a-Lot, whose custom-built crate was taking up the entire bed of a volunteer's truck, would have probably given her a full-blown aneurysm. We finally pulled into the airfield. It was a desolate, wind-swept place, and there, sitting on the tarmac like some magnificent, ugly bird of prey, was the plane. It was an old C-130-style cargo plane, its paint faded and peeling, its ramp lowered like a giant metal tongue. The words, "The Rusty Pelican," were painted haphazardly on its nose. A figure in a worn leather jacket hopped down from the ramp. It was Sully. He had a devil-may-care grin on his face and looked exactly as unhinged as I remembered. "Maxwell, you beautiful lunatic!" he shouted over the wind, slapping me on the back so hard I stumbled. He surveyed our ragtag fleet of vehicles, I gotta be honest, I thought you were kidding about the pig. Sir Oinks-a-Lot is a VIP, I yelled back. Very important pig. Just get them in the air before the whole county blows away. Sully just winked. Don't you worry. Ophelia's got nothing on the rusty pelican. We'll punch a hole right through this weather. Just try not to think about the fact that this bird was built during the Nixon administration. That was not a comforting thought. The loading process began. It was the climax of our ridiculous symphony. The ramp Gus had built in my garage fit just barely. We formed a human chain, a motley crew of soaked volunteers, grizzled contractors, and one very stressed-out rescue operator pushing the heavy pallets up the steep incline and into the cavernous, echoing hold of the plane. The wind howled, trying to push us back. The noise from the animals was deafening. Hannibal the parrot was screaming a string of obscenities he could have only learned from Gus's crew. I was in the center of it all, a mad conductor of chaos. Heave on 3, 1, 2, heave! Watch the retriever on the left. Mind the cat carriers. It was the single most difficult, physically exhausting thing I had ever done. But as I looked at the faces of my team, Gus grunting with effort, Maria pushing with all her might, everyone soaked to the bone and exhausted, but all of them grinning with a kind of delirious joy. I felt a surge of pride so fierce it almost knocked me over. We were all completely insane. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. The last pallet, containing Sir Oinks-a-Lot, was pushed aboard. The great metal door began to whine as it closed, sealing our precious cargo inside. Sully gave me a final jaunty thumbs up from the cockpit window. We all scrambled back, a small, drenched band of rebels, and watched. The 4 massive engines of the rusty Pelican sputtered, then roared to life, a deafening sound that vibrated in our bones. The old plane trembled, then began to move, taxiing down the runway and kicking up a torrential spray of water. It gathered speed, faster and faster, until, with a final defiant roar, it lifted off the ground. It banked hard, fighting the wind, a huge, ugly, magnificent bird, and then it disappeared into the low, swirling gray clouds. For a long moment, we all just stood there on the tarmac, staring at the empty sky, drenched and silent. Then, a ragged, exhausted, triumphant cheer erupted from our little group. We had done it. We had actually done it. I half expected Brenda to pop out from behind a fuel tank, clipboard in hand, to write us up for violating airfield noise ordinances. But there was nothing. Just the wind, the rain, and the profound, bone-deep quiet of a promise kept. The next day, the world was washed clean. The storm had passed, leaving a trail of debris and destruction in its wake. My property was battered. A few fences were down, and a large oak branch had crushed my mailbox, but the main house was standing, and the shelter was intact. I was on the phone with Sully. "They're all safe, Leo," he said, his voice crackling. "Landed smooth as silk. The folks at the other shelter couldn't believe their eyes. Said your pig tried to make friends with a llama, and your parrot is already trying to unionize the other birds. You owe me big time, buddy." "Anything, Sully, name it." "Just keep being you, you magnificent bastard," he said, and hung up. I was smiling as I walked outside, surveying the damage. And that's when I saw her. Brenda was marching across her lawn, or what was left of it. Her yard was a disaster. The floodwater had receded, leaving a disgusting film of mud. Her prize-winning rose bushes had been obliterated by a fallen tree. A massive section of her pristine white fence was smashed to splinters. She saw me, and her face contorted with rage. "You!" she shrieked, stomping towards me. "This is your fault! All of this! Your chaos attracts chaos. Look at my property." I took a slow, deliberate sip of the coffee I was holding. "Brenda, it's called a hurricane. It's a well-known meteorological phenomenon. It tends to redecorate. Maybe take it up with the manager, God. Just then, a police cruiser pulled up. It was Officer Ramirez. He got out of his car, but he wasn't holding a citation book. He was holding back a massive grin. "Mr. Maxwell," he said, tipping his hat. "Heard you had a busy day yesterday. The story's all over the county dispatch. Something about a porcine airlift? You're a bit of a local legend." He glanced over at Brenda's apoplectic face. "Ma'am, is there a problem here?" Brenda sputtered, pointing a trembling finger at me. The plane, the noise, my roses." Ramirez looked at the destroyed rose bushes with mock seriousness. "Yes, ma'am. A real tragedy about those roses. A damn shame. Well, Leo," he said, turning back to me with a twinkle in his eye, "you have a good day? Let us know when your, passengers are returning." He got back in his car and drove away, and I swear I could hear him laughing. Brenda stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Her perfect world was a wreck, and my chaotic world had saved the day. The cop wasn't here to bust me. He was here to congratulate me. She looked like her brain was about to leak out of her ears. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered the buses, the smug smile, the binder, and the feeling passed. She turned without another word and trudged back to her ruined castle. A week later, the sun was shining. The animals were back, their journey home much less dramatic, paid for by a local trucking company that did it for free after hearing the story. The tale of the great animal airlift had made me a hero. Donations poured in from all over the country. Enough to pay Sully his $5,000 and Gus his exorbitant, well-earned fee. Enough, even, for a brand-new, top-of-the-line industrial washing machine. Gus was out in the yard, supervising the fence repair his crew was doing. "Told you it was a stupid idea," he grumbled, handing me an invoice. He'd crossed out the stupidity tax. Maria was by my side, clipboard in hand, now my official Director of Logistics and Teen Angst. I sat on my newly repaired porch, a purring cat on my lap, and looked out at my world. It was still loud, it was still chaotic, it was still perpetually on the brink of financial ruin, but it was whole, it was safe. So here we were, back to square one. Broke, tired, and surrounded by fur. But Trip was chasing butterflies, Sir Oinks-a-Lot was napping in the sun, and Hannibal was on his perch, watching me. "Good job," he squawked. I smiled and raised my coffee mug to the sky. I guess sometimes the craziest plan is the only one that makes any sense, and sometimes you just have to fly your problems away, one pot-bellied pig at a time.